that, and then I'll be passing the ball on to Nina so that she can become the presenter and share her slides. Okay. If you have any questions throughout this webinar, please either enter them in the chat box or ask us. If you have a mic, go ahead and ask your question right out there, share it. If you don't have a question, please go ahead and mute your mic so we don't get any kind of that background feedback loop thing going on. So without further ado, here we go with Nina.
Okay. And have you passed the ball on to me?
Yes, I have.
All right.
I'm muting myself.
Great. All right. So hopefully everybody can just see that first slide. And I want to thank Julie and everyone else for inviting me to speak with you today. I'm really excited about Share It, and so it's fun for me to talk about it. As Julie mentioned, I am the metadata librarian at the South Dakota State Library, and I just wanted to tell you a little bit about what I do there and how it relates to Share It. I have kind of three major responsibilities. The first being cataloging, and I do both original and copy cataloging for all of our state documents. And we receive state documents in both print and electronic format. So my second major responsibility is working with our digitization staff, and I input metadata and the documents themselves into our digital repository. And just this past October, we migrated our digital collections from OCLC's Content DM to the Autographics product, Montage DC, and we're really pleased with that. So we now have 2 Autographics products that we're working with. And that brings me to what we're going to talk about today, which is Share It. And that's really my third major responsibility, which is to act as the systems librarian for the state library. I work with our vendors and with our state IT department to manage our integrated library system, which right now is Book Systems Atrium, and also to manage our Share It installation, which we call South Dakota Share It. So I have some slides that I prepared, and I'm going to talk about, why we decided to implement this statewide network, how we did it, and then kind of what are the advantages to using it. And hopefully I can get through the slides fairly quickly, but as I'm going along, if you have any questions, please just stop me and ask, or put some in the chat and I'll catch up with those. But hopefully we can do maybe a short demo of South Dakota's Share It installation. I know you had a great demo yesterday. I was really pleased to be able to sit in and just kind of watch the Autographic staff do their demo. And I had to say it was really cool because they did the demo on the new version of Share It, which is coming this year, and we don't actually have it in place yet. The main difference is that the landing page has a lot more customizability, if that's a word. There's a lot more that you can do with it for individual libraries, and so we're really excited about that. The staff functionality on the back end is pretty much going to stay the same. There's just a lot of nicer user interface options in the new version. So with that, we'll get started with these slides. So South Dakota Share It for us is a service of the South Dakota State Library, and we offer this to participating libraries at no cost to them. The state library is funding this service. And we're really happy that we were able to do that. It includes library catalogs all across the state. We also input all of the electronic resources that are licensed by the state library. Both patrons and staff can request interlibrary loans depending on individual library settings. Some libraries just have staff input requests, some allow patrons to do that. And then finally, the system also has functionality for staff to copy and export MARC records for use in local catalogs. So I did these slides back in mid-November, and this is kind of our logo for marketing for Share It. Our contract with Autographics allows for a total of 100 libraries. And when I did these slides, we had 82 libraries. Now we have 83. And I have number 84 getting ready. So we're really excited about that. This is kind of the breakdown. And like I said, we do have 83 as of today. We got one additional academic library. So we still have the 41 publics, 19 school or school combo libraries. Those are school and community public libraries. 18 academic libraries with the new one, and the 5 special libraries, including the state library. And we have access to all 52 of our electronic resources in Share It as well. So a little background for you. And prior to my position with the State Library, where I've been for the past 5 years, I worked for the South Dakota Library Network. And the South Dakota Library Network was in place for almost 30 years. It was it started as an effort to automate libraries and ended up with about 56 what we called full member libraries that shared an integrated library system and used all of the modules of that system. We also had another 124 what we termed remote member libraries, and those libraries used just the interlibrary loan module of that integrated library system so that they could borrow from full member libraries. And the network itself was a membership organization. So there were fees paid to, depending on library size and some other items, in order to pay for the integrated library system and other services that were provided. And of course, the shared integrated library system was great. The catalog allowed searching of holdings across the state, allowed for requesting interlibrary loans, and also it made it really easy to do copy cataloging. A little more background for you. Over the years, there was some discussion periodically about migrating to a new integrated library system. And around about probably 2011, 2012, there was a lot of really serious discussion about migrating to a new system. But unfortunately, there was no real consensus among the members. And what ended up happening was the Board of Regents, which includes the 6 state universities in South Dakota, and since they were the big heavy hitters in the network, they decided that they were going to go off together and have a consortium for just the Board of Regents libraries. And then the remaining member libraries needed to find a new integrated library system. And they put a date on that of June 30th of 2016. And all of the members, including the state library, had to have implemented their own ILS. Some of the member libraries got together and created a consortium. We have a consortium of libraries using Koha here in the Black Hills. There's another smaller consortium on the eastern side of the state that decided to go with TLC. And then we have, I think, 17 or 18 libraries around the state. We're not in a consortium per se. We have individual instances, but all ended up selecting Book Systems Atrium as an example. So things that happened, of course, when we lost the shared ILS, we couldn't search multiple library catalogs simultaneously. It became harder to locate and request materials for interlibrary loan, and copy cataloging became a real problem, particularly for the majority of the libraries in the state who are not OCLC members. I think we have maybe, out of 550 total libraries, I think there might be 20 that are OCLC members. Now, the state library is still an OCLC member, but most of our libraries are not. So what's the state library to do? We were hoping that, you know, we might be able to find a solution and put something in place for, you know, at least a large chunk of our libraries to get back some of the functionality that we lost when the shared ILS went away. So we wanted to create primarily a resource sharing solution for interlibrary loan, but also a way to provide federated searching for all of our electronic resources and to help the vast majority of our libraries who are not OCLC members have a way to access bibliographic records in order to copy catalog if they wanted to. So what we decided to do, and remember, this is in the midst of all of these libraries migrating to new integrated library systems. So it's kind of a crazy time for all of our libraries. But this is spring of 2015, so it's about a year ahead of the cutoff date for the migration of the ILSs. So we did a survey, and we asked just simply, you know, if we put a system, a statewide system in place, would you be interested in participating? And we had a really good response to the survey. We had over 100 positive responses and just about 20 negative ones. So we decided to go ahead, and we drafted and put out an RFP that summer, and that's when we got our responses back to that, and we decided to go with Autographic's Share It product. Following the completion of the RFP, we had to go through several meetings with our state IT department. Every time we buy a piece of software or are interested in contracting for a piece of software, we need to work with, you know, the finance folks, but we also have to work with the IT departments so that they can make sure that, you know, they know what we're doing and everything looks okay to them, particularly when these products are being hosted elsewhere. So we did all of that, and then once that was completed and the contract was in place, we started the implementation process. And it was at this point that we decided that we needed to get a really good idea of who was really going to participate in this network, because, you know, as I mentioned, we have space for 100 libraries, and we certainly would like to get to that level. But we know that, you know, sometimes people respond to a survey and then they turn around and decide they don't really want to participate in the actual business of working with the system. So we went back to all of the libraries that had responded that they would like to participate and just presented them with a very simple participation form, which explained the basics of what the system would do, how it would work, and, you know, just ask them to say yes, no, and sign off. And again, we are providing this at no cost to the participating libraries. So it's really a matter of, you know, just saying, yes, they would let us configure their library in the system. So once all of that was done and we were getting all the implementing configuration finished, we scheduled training with autographic staff. Wonderful trainer came to South Dakota and I went around the state with her and we did 4 on-site trainings in May of 2016. And then the following month, she did 4 webinar training sessions for us. And then our launch date was July 1st of 2016. So I'm going to back up just a little bit so I can talk about, you know, why we chose Autographic Share It. But I want to stop for just a second and ask if there are any questions at this point. Check the chat. Okay, I'll keep going. One of the major selling points for us with Autographics was that they built for us what they term a hybrid union catalog. And I know that Albert and Alexandra from Autographics spoke a little bit about this yesterday, but we have 2 different types of libraries included in our system. We have those that have integrated library systems that have Z3950 functionality, and we also have libraries that have ILSs that do not have that functionality. We have 59 libraries that are what Autographics calls Z targets, or they have Z3950 communication functionality. And then we have 24 libraries that are in our union catalog. And the main difference there is that with the Z targets, Share It communicates directly with those integrated library systems. The staff of the libraries don't have to do anything in order to have their collections show up in Share It in real time, essentially. For the union catalog libraries, because there is no direct communication and no Z3950 functionality, they need to provide us with a file of MARC records on a periodic basis. I mean, it's really up to them. If they do a big weeding project, it's great if they then send us a brand new file. We have sort of put in place a policy that they must update their records at least once a year. And so I call around periodically and help some of these libraries get their records exported from their system, and then they send them to me and I get them imported into Share It. So that was a really big selling point, because especially after the South Dakota Library Network dissolved, essentially for most of us, we knew there was going to be a lot of different systems around the state. And then for interlibrary loan, it's really nice that this particular network allows patrons or staff to request interlibrary loans, and it allows staff to manage the requests themselves. For a long time, and still now. The state library will mediate requests for libraries that are not participating in Share It, and we are also essentially the default lender in Share It, so that if a library has placed a request and they're unable to get it from any of the other Share It participating libraries, it will come to the state library, and we may go out of state to try and supply that material for them. A couple of other things that we really liked about Share It, the cataloging component, which allows you, a staff user, to log in and search for records, find them. You can edit them and upload them to your own system. You can edit them and put them back into Share It. There's a little program that comes with the system. It's kind of, it's very similar to MarkEdit in a way, and hopefully I'll show that to you in a little while. But it's very easy to use, easy to edit records, export them, download them, do whatever you need to with them. Another piece of Share It that we really liked was the authentication for our electronic resources. And in addition to that integrated library system that the South Dakota Library Network had, they also provided authentication for all of these electronic resources. So we were going to need to find a way to do that anyway, whether we put in place a resource sharing component or not. We were going to have to do something about authenticating our electronic resources. So Share It's great because it put those two things together. And then finally, we were really looking for the opportunity to do federated searching with our electronic resources, because a lot of times people don't realize that they can do that. We had a product with SDLN, but it wasn't used very much. And we're hoping, and we have seen some jump in statistics to show that this is a easier way to do federated searching, and it's all in the same interface, which really helps a lot. So this is a really busy slide, I realize, but I just wanted to give you an idea of the staff responsibilities for managing the system, and just keeping up with learning about Share It, keeping up with all of our electronic resources. I work with new libraries that decide to participate. I get the technical specs that we need from them and get those to Autographics. I also provide all of our libraries with initial startup and training. Since we had that training before we went live, we do have those webinars recorded, but I also provide some library specific training documentation for them. Do some troubleshooting for issues that come up, answer questions from new participating libraries. I work with our digital resources coordinator to troubleshoot when we have access issues for electronic resources. Another thing that I do, and a couple of other members of our staff as well, I know Alexandra mentioned yesterday the Share It user group, and it really is a great resource. We have quarterly meetings, and we do webinars, we do special meetings. We did one last year on training where several different network staff presented what they do for training their libraries. They're a really great group. Anytime you have questions, kind of network-wide things and put them out there. We always get great response from the user group. So that's a really nice feature from Autographics. I also communicate any updates that we're getting from Autographics. If there's going to be a small software update or something like that, I let our libraries know. I do kind of a weekly email blast, which I'm sure most of the time gets put in the trash, but I do try to let everybody know what's going on. And then I've also created a LiveBinder, which is just kind of an electronic notebook that I have with lots of FAQs and how-to documents that I've been, just working on ever since we went live with the system. So essentially, that's how we did it, why we did it, and then the real benefits to the system are, again, the ability to search multiple library catalogs all in one place, even though we're using disparate systems, and the ability to search all of the electronic resources simultaneously as well. I talked about the state library mediating interlibrary loan requests, and again, we still do that, but participating libraries can manage their own requests, assuming that they can place the request and they receive the material from a lender. They don't have to talk to the state library at all, and that really helps them, because then they're not bound by limits that we have to put in place if we're going to be mediating requests. We have one full-time interlibrary loan librarian, so he would get overwhelmed if he was doing this for all of the libraries. And lastly, the participating libraries can use the cataloging functions in ShareIt, again, to download Marc records, to use in their own ILS, to update records that are in ShareIt as well. And these are my little updates. Since I created the slides in mid-November, a few things have happened. I talked about the fact that we do have now 83 participating libraries, and I'm working with library number 84, which will be a new combo library. And another thing that we've put in place just recently, this was about a month ago now, it was the beginning of December, we've added GeoIP authentication for our electronic resources. And this was put in place by Autographics as well, and they did it at no cost, which is very nice. Prior to this, the way we had our resources set up for authentication was IP authentication within a library or school. So it was click and go access if you were in a facility. And anytime a patron wanted to use electronic resources outside of a library facility, they would need a library card and password from a participating library and ShareIt. So they would click on a resource link and they would be presented with a login window. Now, the way it works is we have click and go access as long as the patron is within the state of South Dakota. And it seems to be working really well. We were a little bit worried about places that were very near borders or in very remote areas of the state, but so far so good. We've had a few hiccups right at the very beginning, but it seems to be working really well, and it just makes access to these resources so much easier. And we've gotten a lot of good feedback so far. And the third thing on this slide is something that I think both Albert and Alexandra mentioned yesterday as well, the Intersystem Sharing Initiative, or ISSI. This initiative allows different statewide systems to borrow from and lend to each other directly within ShareIt. So you get out-of-state borrowing and lending going on without having to go to OCLC, for instance, or come to the state library and have us go to OCLC. And so we have 20 libraries in our network that are participating in ISI, and there are libraries from Kansas, Mississippi, New Jersey, Wisconsin, and Alberta, Canada, that are involved in that initiative. So we're really pleased with that. That went into place just around the end of November, and I've gotten really good feedback from our libraries on that too. They were like, wow, it didn't have to go to the state library. So they were really pleased. And that's my slide. So I will be providing these to Julie, so she'll have them for you if you'd like, and you'll have my contact info. And I'm going to go ahead and just minimize that. And hopefully, there we go. You should be seeing the homepage for our South Dakota ShareIt. But before I log in there and do anything, I'm going to pause for any questions. And they say, why just 100 libraries? That's one of the questions from the chat. And you may recall Albert describing their pricing. And so the reason that we went with 100 libraries had to do with, how many Z targets we had, the size of what our union catalog was going to be, and also the other products that we needed from them. I think he talked about, standards that they put in place, some of the ones that they use, including NSIP, SIP2, which we're using for authentication for the resources. And now if GeoIP doesn't work, we still have that as backup. We also have ISO in place because we have, the state library has a direct connection between ShareIt and OCLC's or Atlas Systems Iliad product, because if we do need to go out of state and out of ShareIt altogether, we can do that directly using ISO. But the reason for just 100 libraries had to do with cost. And a question in the chat, if libraries only provide files of MARC records on a periodic basis, how does ShareIt show the most recent acquisitions? What about item status? Is it available? And for the union catalog, shelf status is not necessarily available. It will show that it's owned by a particular library, but it's only the Z targets that will say whether an item is in or out. Okay, another question about MARC records. It says, where do the MARC records come from that libraries can find and upload? Those are, and I'll go in and show you actually in a moment, but those would be records that are actually already in your ShareIt system. So it's not, you're not going, from ShareIt to an outside source to get records. It would be records that are already owned by member libraries.
Nina,
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and,
can you hear me?
I think there's someone who's trying to speak, Nina.
oh, okay.
Nina, can you hear me?
Let me turn, see if I can get you a little louder.
Can you hear me now? Let me see if I can turn mine up.
Go ahead and try again.
Can you hear me now?
A little better, yeah.
Well, it's just Mary Jo.
Hi.
Can I just join myself? Since you have room for
Sure.
let's talk, because OCLC is driving me out of my mind.
They kind of do that to us too.
Thank you.
Sure. There was another question in the chat. It says, if something needs to be filled out of network, does it take longer? And yes, it does. We usually say it can take, you know, 2 weeks or longer. Generally, when things are in network, it's fairly quick. We do have in place, not completely statewide, but it does go around the state, a courier service that the state library provides. But again, it does not serve every library in the state. So we do rely on the Postal Service quite a bit as well. I don't know whether the Wi-Fi is slowing us down or what, but my login window doesn't want to open. So hopefully it will. There we go. And I'm just going to close the chat for a moment while this is loading. All right. So what I'm going to do, just quickly, I know Alexandra kind of went through all of this for you yesterday and she did a great demo, but I just want to show you the staff dashboard. And I'm logged in as a staff person with administrative permissions. So it's not really showing my menu very well. I'm not sure why. There we go. So you can see there's a lot of stuff. And because I'm logged in as an administrative staff person, I have access to everything that the system has, except for a few things that the network administrator login has, which is a login that I use when I need to do things across the board for all of our libraries. But you can, any staff person can configure this staff dashboard so that it is as neat or as messy as you want it to be. You can do a quick menu with just the things that you use all the time and keep all of the rest of these, closed up or out of your way. And I just wanted to show you on the cataloging administrative menu, there's an option for downloading the AGCAT utility. And I have that on this computer already. It's what I mentioned a while ago that's similar to a MarkEdit program. And it's what you use when you want to edit records that you find in ShareIt. You can also use it to create brand new records if you want to do original cataloging. So I'm going to do a search. Come on. Here we go. I feel, there we go. A little slow. So you can see when the results come up, and the way we have our system set up, I'm just going to click on the resource locator here. Boy, it's really, the Wi-Fi is real slow. Anyway, I wanted to show you that the way we have it set up, and this is for interlibrary loan purposes primarily, we have all of our South Dakota libraries selected to be searched by default. That's why they're all checked off here. We library staff can change that if they wish to, but when we set it up for a new participating library, we just automatically set it up so that all of the South Dakota libraries are searched by default. And you can see over here we have those ISI participating libraries, which are not searched by default, but a staff person could select any of them if they want to. And you can see here's our list for the Kansas libraries. And then in addition to the library catalogs, as I've said several times, we have all of our licensed electronic resources available in ShareIt as well. And you can either search them in this interface, or you can search them individually by clicking on a link so that they open up in a little window just for that individual resource. And of course, we also have a list, an A to Z list, and subject listings on the state library web pages so that people can go directly there to search them as well. So you can see it just opens up the EBSCO window for that particular resource. So I'm going to go back to my search and show you that cataloging bit, because I think that's one thing that wasn't demoed yesterday that I thought you might want to see. So if I select this particular record, I'm just clicking on the book cover there. And when I get to the point of the full record display where I can see the details, and then there's where to find it. If I click on that, it'll pop me down to the libraries that own it, and of course the ones that have Z3950 functionality will give us a shelf status. So that's nice. And then finally, we get the Marc display at the bottom. And there is an edit bib record button right there, but I'm going to scroll up a little bit just to show you that under staff functions, it's the same, but there's also edit bib record here. You could download the record directly. You could add it to a download cart within ShareIt. So if you wanted several records, you could search, find them, put them all in your cart, and then download them all at once. But if I click on edit bib record, hello. what it should do is give me a little pop-up that says, do you want to run AGCat? And so I was going to show you what that looks like. There you go. It's thinking about it. There we go. So hopefully you can see this pop up now. And if you're familiar with MarkEdit or some other Marc editing tools, this should look somewhat familiar to you. And you can just click in, if you wanted to do something with the call number, click in there and change it. But obviously there's lots of tools as well. But it's kind of a nice little program. And then if I wanted to, I could save this to my cart. If I had made some edits to it, I could save it right back to the database and share it. I could save it to both the database and the cart if I wanted to. You can copy things and then, save them for upload into your own ILS or whatever you need to do. And there's lots of editing tools here as well. And you can copy and overlay records that are in the system. Insert different tags that you need, etc. So I just wanted to show that to you because I know that was one of the things that some of your libraries were particularly interested in, the cataloging functionality. So, any other questions? All right, well,
thanks, Nina. This has been really a fantastic overview. And again, for people that kind of arrived late, we are recording this webinar and we will be sending out that link to folks, hopefully. We'll also be sharing she's going to be sending me a copy of her PowerPoint slide so we can also share that with people as well.
It looks like we did get another question in the chat, which says, when you're adding records for new items that aren't in the system yet, where do you get the Marc records? And if your library is in a shared system and you have the record in your local ILS, it will automatically come into share it. So it kind of depends on where, some of our libraries get bib records from their vendors. Again, a few of them are still using OCLC. A lot of our libraries get bib records from Library of Congress. So there are a few, different places that people get their Marc records, but if you're cataloging in your own ILS and the record's not in share it yet, then some libraries will tend to wait a little bit or make a quick record in the local system so that you can circulate the item. But in order to get the full cataloging done, you might wait to see if somebody else gets it. If it's a unique material, then you could go ahead and create a record using that AGCAT utility, you can create an original record if you need to. All right. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate your inviting me to talk about Share It. And again, if any questions come up as you pursue this, or just thinking about the different demos that were done last couple of days, just let me know. I'd be glad to answer anything.
Well, thank you very much, Nina. We'll be definitely keeping in touch, I'm sure. Thanks. And thanks everybody for joining us today. I hope you guys have a great day. So Nina, if you would give me back the ball, then I'll stop the recording.
All right. There you go. Thanks.